And as a reminder, use your mute button when not speaking, and members are encouraged to use the chat function to share in today's meeting. Also, please note that the meeting is being recorded. We're now going to move to our first formal order of business, which is to approve the meeting summary from the September 2025 meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
And can we get a second?
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. Any changes to the September summary? Hearing none, the meeting summary is approved. We'll move on to committee reports. And first committee report is the MWAC Technical Advisor Committee. I'll turn to Joe Jaguda. Is Joe here?
He is here. I did see him.
I see him too.
Oh, that's the chat, but the participant list. It is.
Maybe Joe's having trouble.
Yeah, Joseph, you're muted.
All right, when I went to go open my open up the document, my computer froze there for a second. Give me one. I'm almost back in there. Sorry about that, Chair. So we held the last MWAC meeting on November the 12th and discussed the following items. We discussed the 2015 ozone NAAQS redesignation request and maintenance plan inventories. We discussed in particular the status of the inventories for the milestone years of 2017, 2022, 2032, and 2038. We also discussed the sensitivity results presented by the Transportation Planning Board staff for evaluating the impact of different alternative vehicle fuel types data options from moves based on the on-road inventories for the SIP. And this is going to impact the motor vehicle emission budget issues. So that's why it was important to look at. We also got a presentation from DOEE staff on an evaluation of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's air quality modeling, an evaluation of that product, where the staff looked at several days that were modeled for ozone in the past ozone season and see how the model performed. And thirdly, we discussed contingency measures that would be part of the redesignation request and maintenance plan, in particular the maintenance plan, and the members discussed the preliminary, we just had a preliminary discussion about how we were going to approach that. And that was the extent of the meeting. Does anyone have any questions?
Questions? All right, thanks, Joseph. Let's move on to Air and Climate Public Advisory Committee. William Washburn. William?
I'll mute him. Go in the,
Okay. Morning, Chair Denoga.
Good morning, or good afternoon.
Yeah, afternoon. I just got off of another Zoom meeting, so. Okay. All right. So ACPAC held its regular meeting on Monday, the 17th of November. And we had a presentation from COG staff with regards to the draft environmental justice toolkit refresh. The toolkit basically dates back to 2017. And in 2023, CPC and MWAC approved ACPAC to pursue updating the EJ toolkit. We realized that some time has passed during that time, and but during that time, the COGS Climate, Energy, and Air team led 3 different efforts with regards to equity, environmental justice in mind. The body directed a new subcommittee on environmental justice to develop a resource guide for air quality action this year, and we had a development process that I participated in along with two other members of ACPAC. On the climate energy side, there was a climate pollution reduction grant process that developed a comprehensive climate action plan with an outreach component, and along with the upgraded EJ toolkit. We reviewed the first draft and provided comments, and you'll hear more about the draft EJ toolkit later in the agenda for this meeting. But the final version is expected to be ready for ACPAC to be presented to ACPAC at its January 26th meeting. Also in the November meeting, we had a presentation from the Energy Justice Lab regarding their research and programs on housing energy insecurity, making energy more affordable for people who are caught in a pinch. And also, I wanted to mention the fact that Ms. Leah Boggs took advantage of that presentation and had developed a parallel panel discussion for COG's Energy Committee meeting, and you know, and she feel free to update you with regards to proceedings there. There are some important discussions that we're going to have given the tightening in funding at the federal level for these types of programs. Finally, I appointed a subcommittee to develop a slate of nominees for the chair and the vice chair for 2026, and we'll be voting on that slate at our January meeting. And finally, we are recruiting for new members to join ACPAC. The recruitment campaign starts this month. The only requirement basically is that applicants must live within the region served by COG. Our next meeting, as I mentioned, is the 26th of January, and you can contact COG staff Leah Boggs for any questions you might have. And that's it for ACPAC, and I thank you once again.
Thank you, William. Excellent. We'll turn now to Clean Air Partners. Jen Desimone.
Thank you so much, Chair Janoga. Clean Air Partners just wrapped up this year's campaign just last month, and we have already switched gears into beginning the planning for 2026. What I can confirm today is that during Air Quality Awareness Week, which is always the first week in May, Clean Air Partners will be announcing another gas-powered lawnmower exchange event, and this will be the third year that Clean Air Partners has done that. We'll be partnering again with Ace Hardware stores across the Baltimore, Washington region, where residents can take in gas-powered mowers, trimmers, and blowers in exchange for new electric equipment. We'll have a lot more details on this to come as we, start solidifying the plans. But heads up, I just want to give everybody a heads up that will be coming down the pike next year. And we're really looking forward to doing another one of these events. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jen. Finally, the Climate, Energy, and Environment Policy Committee. Jeff?
Yes, the Climate, Energy, Environment Policy Committee met on November 19th. The main focus of the meeting was really sharing of best practices, both within the Mid-Atlantic as well as internationally on mitigation and resilience options. First, we heard from Dr. Bucher from the Border Step Institute from Germany, and we kind of dug into the lessons learned and a lot of the great work that's happening overseas in Germany on climate action. Then we had a panel, a roundtable with our partners throughout the Mid-Atlantic. So we called it the Mid-Atlantic Climate Leaders Roundtable. We've actually supported that network since 2010. So it's a long-standing group in the Mid-Atlantic, all working on climate sustainability. So that was good to keep that effort going now that EPA has stopped coordinating that under this new administration. Finally, we heard about a new initiative in the private sector. There's a new global coalition working to enhance some carbon accounting framework. So it's at the very early stages. So we got kind of a briefing on that. So that concludes my remarks. Thanks.
Hey, thanks, Jeff. We'll move on to local and state updates. So now's the opportunity for both local and state members to share information on their jurisdiction's activities. And first, we'll turn to our local jurisdictions. Do Maryland members have any updates that they would like to share? Maryland? How about Virginia, local jurisdictions? Okay, let's move on. Let's hear from the activities from the state agencies. First, District of Columbia.
Yes. So we published one for 28th.
Hey, Joe, your microphone's going in and out. We're not hearing you. Still not hearing you.
There's a red light. His mic is red, so his mic is not
He was
on.
having computer troubles before.
Oh, and now he can't hear us. I don't think. That was Mike.
He's not able to hear us.
Maybe we should move on to Maryland and come back to. Is Joe back?
No,
Just
Joseph,
you
you have
muted.
on mute.
Maybe.
Yeah. Without the headset.
We can't hear you, Joseph.
Can you take off the headset? I don't know if you can hear.
Let's move on to Maryland, and we'll see if Joseph can figure it out. Maryland area agencies.
This is MD. We have no updates right now.
Okay, Virginia, is that Tom Ballou?
Yeah, just one update, Mr. Chairman. We're finally able to submit our second 10-year regional haze plan to EPA at the end of October. So that's been a long road for a number of reasons, but we finally got over the hump.
Okay. How's Joseph doing?
Third time's a charm. Can you hear me?
Yes, great.
Good, awesome. So we have a very similar update for our first as Virginia. Then we also submitted our regional haze progress report at the end of October for the second planning period. We also published a rule proposal on the 28th to ease the permitting process around our odor control regulations. There's just a lot of dual processes going on. So we hope that proposal will ease the whole process. And the comment period on that ends on December 29th. And then probably before the next time we meet, we're going to be pushing out another request for applicants to electrify medium and heavy duty diesel vehicles in the private sector. So
can you
pay
imagine
attention to
driving
that.
up while trees are falling?
Okay, thank you.
If somebody needs their microphone off. All right, thanks, Joseph. Now let's move on to the election of officers. It's my pleasure to present the nominating committee's 2026 slate of officers and pass the baton. So the nominating committee included Shannon Moore of Frederick County, Colin Burrell, District of Columbia, and Kenny Bodie, Prince William County. And the proposed slate of officers was sent to members in advance of this meeting. It was posted on the MWAC meeting webpage. So, drum roll. The committee has nominated the following: Chair Dave Snyder, Falls Church. Dave's very experienced. Maryland Vice Chair Alan Hugh, College Park. Virginia Vice Chair Sonia Vasquez Luna from Manassas. And for the district vice chair, the position is still vacant, and our MWAC staff is working with the DC Council to identify an officer, and they hope to bring a nomination to us in a future meeting. So, do I hear a motion to accept the slate of officers?
So moved.
Okay, we got a motion.
Councilmember
Second.
Sale.
We get a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed? Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the slate is approved. I'd like to congratulate all the new officers, and we know that the committee is going to be in great hands with Mr. Snyder and the vice chairs as they take on their duties in 2026. So thank you all for your willingness to serve. And let's now move on to the 2015 ozone standard maintenance plan. So in the upcoming year, we're going to continue to focus on the development of a maintenance plan and redesignation request for the 2015 ozone standard. So we'll have a brief update on this initiative and what will be expected as the work moves forward. So we'll turn to Sunil.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm going to talk about the work we are doing for the redesignation request and maintenance plan for the current ozone standard for the Washington, D.C. region. So I'm just going to talk about where we are and also talk about some schedules for completing these plans. So just kind of give you a quick background.
Your presentation's not moving forward. Hold 1 second, everyone. We're fixing the presentation.
Please move now.
There we go. Yep, there we go.
All right, so just to give you some background here, I'm sharing a chart that shows the trends in the design value. Design value, again, is a parameter based on the 3 consecutive years of data. If this data is above the standard, then we're in non-attainment. If we are at or below the standard, then we are in attainment. So as you can see in this chart, we have been in attainment of the current ozone standard, which is 70 parts per billion since 2021. Current design value based on the draft in 2025 data is 69 ppb, which continues to show attainment even this year. So since we have been attaining the standard for a few years now, the region decided to submit a request to EPA to to redesignate the area to attainment or maintenance. And whenever we do that, we are also required by EPA to kind of submit a plan, which is called maintenance plan, that will demonstrate that the area will continue to attain the standard in the future. As part of this attainment plan, one of the prerequisite is that EPA publishes a rule, a final rule, basically, which confirms that the region had attained the standard, and this is called, final rule is called determination of attainment by the attainment date. And there is also an associated rule called clean data determination, which essentially says that the region has attained the standard, and we can proceed with the maintenance plan and redesignation request. So that rule became effective on May 5th this year. And so we are now officially allowed by EPA to submit this request to EPA and to attain our, designate our region to attainment or maintenance for the current standard. And as a result, we're also working on that request along with the maintenance plan. So we haven't actually started working on this since we're anticipating this final rule from EPA since 2024. So we had detailed interactions with EPA regarding some of the questions that we had discussed in previous MWAC meeting. But just to kind of summarize, we had questions on the milestone years that will be there for we have to show the investment inventories in the plan. And then was some other prerequisites that we talked EPA, so we got the response from them and subsequently started moving towards working on the plan. So here are the milestone years for the plan for which we are preparing the emission inventories for different sources. So base year of the plan is 2017. This is the year for which we have already submitted a detailed emission inventory to EPA when we were designated as a non-attainment first by EPA for the current user standard. The attainment year is 2022, even though we attained a little early, actually 2021, but this year, we chose this year because there are detailed inventories available from EPA, like point sources and some of the non-point sources from EPA. So we thought it will be easier and it will be more effective and fast if we use this emission inventories from EPA to develop our plan. So that's attainment in 2022. We have a maintenance year, which is we have to show that you will keep attaining the standard future. So that's until 2038. And then in the interim, between attainment and maintenance year, EPA requires us to have to miss inventories for an interim year, is called, and that's 2032.
Hey, Sunil, your PowerPoint's not moving forward.
Do you want me to share it from my computer?
Yes,
Yes, try
that'd
that.
be great, Alyssa.
I think he's on the next slide.
Are you able to see?
Yes,
Yes.
now
He's on slide 4, though.
Slide 4? Okay.
yes, move to the next slide, please.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So as I said, there are 4 milestone years for which we have to prepare emission inventories. The base year 2017, attainment year 2022, interim year 2032, and maintenance year 2038. We already have submitted a base year 2017 emission inventories to EPA a few years ago when we were first designated as a non-attainment for the current ozone standard. However, some of the non-road and on-road emission inventories need to be updated because we have a new MOOS model. So those image inventories need to be updated. So we have to do that, but we have to develop inventories for 2022, 32, and 38 for is a brand. Those are going to be brand new emission inventories, and so we will be developing emission inventories for point sources, area sources, or non-point sources as they are now called. And there are also marine sources, airport, railway sources, and then we have a MOOS model, MOOS 5 version. That's the latest we have from EPA, and that will we use that to develop on-road and non-road inventories for those 3 years. In addition to this emission inventories, we also need to have a contingency measure. So in case if we ever go back, ever exceed the standard in the future, then those contingency measure will become, we need to be implemented quickly. So that's the review. So right now we need to have a list of those measures ready in the plan to go in case if we ever violate the standard. Next slide, please. So where we are in terms of emission inventories, so point sources ongoing. We have some draft inventories complete. We are waiting for some inventories, some more inventories. And non-point, marine, airport, railway sources, again, all these are all ongoing. We have developed, the region has decided to use two separate approaches to develop these inventories for those 3 years. One will be using an approach that EPA already has developed as part of their photochemical modeling, and another approach will be using COG for cooperative forecast, which we have in the past used to project our emission inventories in future years. So we'll be comparing those separate approaches and see which one makes more sense or more appropriate. Then we have non-road model inventories. Some of the inventories are already complete. We are working on the final last year, which is 2038 inventories. On-road model inventories are ongoing. We are still in the process of finalizing some of the inputs. Those are very important inputs. And one of the main inputs that we are still kind of working on is to decide on what will be the projected, what will be the electric vehicle share in of the fleet in the future. If so, there are some different numbers that are coming up from different sources, and that will have implications on the emission inventories and therefore on the motor vehicle emission budgets. So that's an important input. So we are currently discussing those options within MWAQC. We hopefully will get decide on the proper source to use for those for that particular input, and once that is done, we'll start running in our most 5 models to develop the on-road emissions inventories. Contingency measures, we had a brief discussion in the TAC meeting in November to kind of start the discussion. So we have some preliminary discussion and we have some idea of where to get those measures from. Next slide, please. A draft schedule. So you're looking at the screen, a draft schedule, and just give me a second because the slides are really small. So as I said, we had started working on it since 2024. So some of the work has already been complete. For example, we're required to coordinate with EPA on the methodology, on the data sources, and the milestone year, some other prerequisites concerning some of the SIP components. So we had the discussion with them earlier in 2024, and they responded and included all those, their directions in our plan. So that's all work completed in 2024. Then we started actually working on developing emission inventories. So as you can see, the point sources, we're expecting that we will be able to have the source, that inventory from all 3 jurisdictions in good shape by January end. We're also working on the non-point sources. We have some good draft numbers ready, but those need to be finalized, and then we will use the second approach to kind of, so that work will also hopefully will be done in January. The moves inputs, when we already got those, we are working on some quality assuring the moves inputs, mainly for the on-road sector. The non-road emissions inventories are being already 3 years have been completed. The 4th year is being taken this month, so that work will be done this month. So once we have the moves input for on-road finalized, we will start working in January, February timeframe. Once we have done all the mobile emission inventory is done, then as you can see in the yellow bar in February next year, we will have this we'll have the discussion on the motor vehicle emission budgets. And then we also started working on the contingency measures in parallel, and we'll also shortly start working on plan document itself. So we have we have some templates from prior years. We can use some of that to update our plans or develop a new plan document for this for the current maintenance plan. Once everything is done, then we'll ship it to EPA in March, April timeframe. Hopefully, they will be able to respond by April, and if they have any questions, and we'll be able to take their comments and questions in our plan. And that work is supposed to be done in May. If we fall back, then kind of it may, if say let's June, July, then we still have time to do it in we ideally would like to take the public hearing in June, July. So that's when we will need MWAC approval on the plan and that's in the June, July time frame. However, if we do a little bit get slowed down because of any issues, then we still have August, September time frame to take the plan to MWAC in September. Then once we have the public comments, we receive the comments from the public, then we'll try to incorporate the response to those comments in September. But if not, then we can do it by November. And then depending on when the plan is finally approved by MWAC, we can do it in either September, or we can done by latest by say next year end, or we may slightly, if they get delayed, we'll go into the early 2027. So that's and there you have some dates here in MWAC TAC and MWAC, and that's when we take we'll be taking our draft plan for discussion, the committees and approvals. So those are all listed here. Basically, to summarize, we were trying to get this plan complete by a year end. If not, then latest by early February timeframe, and then states will be able to ship it to EPA. So that's where we are, and that's all I had. I will be happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Sunil. Any questions? Sounds like you have a lot of work ahead of you, Sunil. Okay, not hearing any questions. Thanks again. Let's move on to the ACPAC Environmental Justice Toolkit. We have a presentation from Heidi Bonifan on the ACPAC's Environmental Justice Toolkit, which is a refresh of the original version that was developed in 2017. Yep. Was there a question?
And we're bringing it up right on the screen.
Okay,
Right.
we'll turn it over to Heidi.
Do you want me to use them?
Can you see it?
Yep.
Share.
Got it. We can see it.
Okay.
Okay, great. Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Heidi Bonifan, and thank you, Sunil. And as did the slide advance? Okay. Okay.
It did not.
Oh,
I'm sharing it on my end. I think.
Yeah.
are you seeing slide?
No, so you just get out of the.
So you're seeing slide 2, everyone?
Well, Alyssa just said she's sharing.
Says,
Oh.
Alyssa will be sharing. So get.
Oh,
get
okay.
rid of
Stop
this.
share.
Stop sharing. No, get rid of this.
Yeah, right.
Just close it.
Share.
Just close it.
Drop them.
Okay.
Just
Thank
share.
you, Alyssa.
You're welcome. I know that room's having quite the issues today, so it's probably easier this way.
For anyone who's not aware, COG staff recently moved up to 9th floor, and we're in a different conference room than we used to be. But anyway, yeah, Chair Washburn, ACPAC Chair, just did a great job summarizing kind of the status of where several different environmental justice COG pieces have come together in the last year. So as he went over this refresh or update to the 2017 Environmental Justice Toolkit was authorized in 2023, and racial equity was an objective for MWAC in their FY24, in your FY24 plan work program. And then with that came the formation of the EJ subcommittee, and Bill Washburn was on there along with Julie Kimmel and Reverend Jacqueline Norris of ACPAC, as well as as Tom and Dave Snyder. So we appreciated everyone who was part of that subcommittee, and as a result of it, there was a resource guide that was produced in May. And then in addition, the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Comprehensive Climate Action Plan for the COG region and the MSA was just completed literally a few days ago, the end of November. And that is now on the COG website. But as part of that, there was also an emphasis on a measure for community engagement and inclusion of low income and disadvantaged communities. And then also a workforce component and how workforce is going to sort of evolve in regard to the clean energy sector. So all these pieces have dovetailed nicely. And if we could go on to the next slide, Alyssa, I'll just try to reiterate or distinguish between the resource guide, which was a voluntary framework for outdoor air quality, focused on voluntary strategies for equity and environmental justice and air quality planning and program policy development. And then this EJ toolkit, in addition to having the air quality component, it also is climate and energy. And its focus is on community engagement and ultimately integration with policy. So next slide, please, Alyssa. And then this is an update to the 2017 toolkit. So it's really a practical guide to promote equity, inclusivity, and sustainability for air quality, climate, and energy policies, and with the goal of a more just and equitable region. Next slide. So this, to update the toolkit, we utilized a two-pronged approach. One piece was to engage with community leaders, community-based organization and leaders in the region, and we did this via the consultant ECNAVAL, and they met with ACPAC and then also organizations in the region to gather information about what's important to communities. And then we held two government workshops in February and March to hear from local government staff about what is working, what is challenging with community engagement. And then I want to thank my colleagues, Caroline Sherman and Robert Christopher, who helped with the writing, as well as Leah Boggs. Caroline helped us look at some national case studies, and then we also attended some different environmental justice conferences over the course of the year. And so all of this culminates together. This body of knowledge really pointed to a need to focus on building trust and culturally responsive communications. And then we really learned that there's an important role of intermediaries or partners to carry this out, effective community engagement. It's helpful for the local governments to work with trusted community members or leaders in the community. And then this toolkit update is going to touch on support for communities through resiliency hubs and engagement in the community-based science. It touches on workforce and then some funding sources. so it's really designed for local government, but it has a community component as well. Next slide, please. All right, so the format of this revised toolkit follows the original 2017 format, which had 9 approaches. Approach 1 was about using environmental justice mapping tools, and it's been updated to say those are all very good and useful, but also to ground truth it via communities. That's what our local governments have learned since 2017 and are doing effectively. And then the second approach is sort of focused on meeting best practices, and that's again building trust, and then effective ways to have meetings and engagements with communities. The third is a metrics focus, the third approach, and right now it's like the engagement, the metrics are focused on engagement, but we're working on expanding this to see if there's some measures of effective program and policy reach that we can incorporate too. And then the fourth approach is focused on the importance of partnerships and for reaching communities, and that can be everything from shared meeting spaces to working together to access funding, and helping distribute and disseminate information and materials. And then the final culmination of all this is, again, working environmental justice and equity into your policies and plans. And this area has really grown since 2017. So the new toolkit aims to have a lot of examples of that, where environmental justice is really embedded in a lot of the climate action plans and air quality work that you're all doing. So next slide, please. So this is a bit repetitive, but the body of the toolkit is this on the ground case studies and examples, and then the appendix has a brief summary of some policies, state level policies that are impacting environmental justice, some funding resources, and then reports and guides for more information and references that we're using creating the toolkit. Next slide, please. And so as Chair Washburn mentioned, we presented the draft, the first draft of the revised toolkit to ACPAC at the end of November meeting. And now we got some really good feedback. Members were generally pleased with the format and the overall content, but we are working to incorporate feedback, and we'll be trying to gather some additional case studies from our region, and then adding cover photos, and then we have the schedule on the next slide. We will be getting this out to the CPC committee and community-based organizations for their review in the month of December. And then it'll go through our Office of Communications and route it back to ACPAC at the end of January 26th meeting for their approval. And then it'll be available to all of you and posted on the COG website. So I think that is it, unless there are questions. I welcome questions or comments.
Tom, you're on mute.
I should know better. So any questions? Well, great work, and it looks like you guys have been doing a lot. So we'll move on. Thank you, Heidi. Next, we're going to talk about air pollution and Parkinson's disease. So we are pleased to introduce our guest speaker. Jeff Bronstein is UCLA's director of the Levin Family Movement Disorder Center and professor of neurology. Mr. Bronstein directs a basic science laboratory investigating the causes of Parkinson's disease, and he's involved in emerging research on the link between air pollution and Parkinson's, and we'll hear about that today. Mr. Bronstein, thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Thanks. Do you see me okay? You hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. Let me try to share and see if I can. I usually use Zoom, so.
I feel you.
Okay. It doesn't seem to be sharing.
We see
try
it.
one.
We see
You see
it.
it? Oh, you do? Great. Okay. Okay. Do you see my, which version? Do you see my, do I have to switch screens?
We're not seeing the full screen.
Presenter.
There you go.
How's that?
Now we are.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for having me. I'm a movement disorder neurologist, so I take care of Parkinson's, but I do a lot of research in it as well. And so what my interest has been for the last 30 years is trying to understand how the environment affects the incidence and the progression of Parkinson's disease. I don't take any money from anybody. So I think you guys know as well, or maybe even better, is that, the risk of general health from air pollution is horrendous, and Parkinson's is only one small part of it. But when you do get it, it has a great impact on the quality of life. It's been about 10 years now, maybe a little less, that people have started to appreciate that air pollution affects the brain. This is the cover of Science, which is a very prominent journal. And it was kind of the beginning of things. We started studying a little bit before this, a couple of years before. It was my collaborator, Beata Ritz, who really got me interested in the area. So there's various sources of air pollution, and most of these, the only reason I bring this up is we have different monitors, as you likely know, that monitor different parts of air pollution, and that gives us some idea of the sources, but they're very complex mixtures and makes it tough to study since it's probably multiple contaminants that contribute to neuronal toxicity. As sources, industry, this is obviously an oversimplification since it matters. It's different in different places. And where we study things in the Central Valley, California, traffic and transportation related, a lot of diesel, a lot of traffic related air pollution. It's the primary problem, and some agricultural as well. So there's a number of neurologic disorders that are affected by air pollution, stroke probably being the most common. Other things like migraine, not very good evidence for multiple sclerosis or ALS. Dementia is emerging. It's a huge group of many disorders. So it's pretty difficult to just clump them together, but often in a lot of the databases, people just put dementia, not the course of dementia, which is probably one of the main problems in studying it. It looks like it's associated with increased risk of Alzheimer's, and there's a lot of overlap between the mechanisms of toxicity in Alzheimer's as there are in Parkinson's disease. Clearly very different diseases, but some of the mechanisms, which I'll talk about in a second, overlap considerably. Now, it's really hard to study when you study the environment. One reason we believe that it's important is we've done extensive genetic studies now in Parkinson's, sequenced tens of thousands of people, and we can only explain about 30% of Parkinson's. So there's a variety of environmental factors that we're slowly starting to learn about. There's an interesting phenomenon which really supports the environment playing a significant role. That's when we look at the pathology of Parkinson's, which is this alpha-synuclein and Lewy bodies, which I'll show you soon. It really starts in the olfactory bulb and in the gut. This is how our body interfaces with the environment. We breathe things in and we ingest them. And so it's a clue that the environment may be very important. Now, it's a pretty rare disease. When you do epidemiology, it's a lot easier to do, say, diabetes, because you have biomarkers that are numbers, and it's very, very common relative to Parkinson's. There's about 1 million people in the US with Parkinson. So it's, as a neurologic disease, it's pretty common, but as a epidemiologic disease, it's pretty rare, which makes it harder to study. The diagnosis, now, most people believe, they see one buddy with tremors and slowness, they think it's Parkinson's disease. And many times it's true, but there's actually many different causes of those symptoms or Parkinsonisms. And establishing a firm diagnosis is really critical because it just kills your statistics if you're off by 20% or so, which is about 25% is the common misdiagnosis in the community, maybe even higher. It's really slowly progressive. So it's really difficult to model this in animals. People, it takes good 20 years to get it in Parkinson's. Grants will only fund us for 5, and mice only live 2 to 3. So it's tough to model in animals, which is something that's important in trying to confirm associations as being causal. The other problem, which is probably the biggest one, is this is the disease progression. So if we diagnose the disease here, right in the middle, that's when the earliest symptom maybe has a little bit of a tremor. We now know that the disease process started somewhere around 20 years before that. It's a long story how we know that, but it's pretty well documented that once you are diagnosed with Parkinson's, you've had it for a decade or two at least, maybe even earlier. So when we're looking at exposures, we need to look at exposures way back here and not what's happening now. And so when we get these really interesting clusters where there's 10 young people get Parkinson's, they're all in the same place. When you go back 20 years, everything's different than it is now. So it gets really, really hard to study. So there's been a number of epidemiologic studies. This is just a meta-analysis that was done within the last 5 years or so. And in general, there's trends for it to be increased, an increased risk, with odds ratios generally about 1.5 or about a 50% increase in risk. Not all studies are positive. So when I did a review, and this is Dr. Ritz, who's really been a main driver of a lot of our research, one of the big problems is when you start looking at the studies one by one is this lag time. So when you look at the lag time, all the ones that had a fairly long lag time all showed positive associations. So that is one of the biggest factors in a lot of the research. Beata's study, this was done in Denmark. She published it in 2016, and it took a long time before that to get this thing going. So she's been interested in a very long time, and most of this is traffic related. And she found the odds ratios, again, averaging about 1.5 or so. We've done some more in-depth studies in the Central Valley, California, and because she did it through database searching in Denmark, but in our Central Valley, we have a large cohort of patients that I've evaluated almost all of them, and with subsequent evaluations, been doing it for 25 years, driving out there doing this. So it's been a real big effort from many people. And we measured both traffic related, usually we think about carbon monoxide as one of the markers for traffic related, and other industrial PM 2.5. These are those small particles, and we focus on 2.5 and smaller because we know those are the ones that enter through the lungs into the brain. The exposure period, we looked at least 5 years before the diagnosis was made, up to 15 years before, when we had really good data for. Now, the Central Valley, you can see here, this is a huge agricultural area, and we started studying it because of pesticide use. And there's many pesticides we found alter risk of the disease and progression. It overlaps quite a bit with other markers of air pollution. So this is the region that we studied: Fresno, Bakersfield, and Visalia, all in this area here, in the PM 2.5 in the bottom left. That's where all of our subjects are. And we use community-based controls. So it's a really strong cohort and a really strong control group. And what we found was a dose dependent when we use traffic-related markers, carbon monoxide. We see a dose-related increase in risk. And the way we did this is by doing geocoding, looking at where people live and where they work. And there's a pretty strong correlation, both depending on how you model it, both in if you were use the address from your work, which men tend to correlate more with, and for the women tend to correlate more with home for obvious reasons. One of the reasons why I think this is so strong is not only do we see a dose response, but we're able to control for other co-exposures, especially pesticide exposure, which is one of the strongest risk factors that's been associated with Parkinson's disease. And we have extensive details on exposures from a pesticide use report that California has been collecting for almost 50 years now. So we know exactly what people have been exposed to over a very long period of time. When we use PM 2.5, we also see similar associations. So the size of the effect for many people thinks relatively small, but when you start thinking about how many people are exposed to high levels of air pollution, and this is in the US, which is relatively low compared to many other countries, especially in the developing world, it really can account for a lot. So if we take some, back of the napkin kind of calculations, the air pollution in LA, for example, was quite high 20 years ago. And if we use those statistics from the Danish study, it could account for almost 70% of all the Parkinson's cases in Los Angeles County. So the potential impact on the community is quite large. Now, when you make these associations, it's so important to try to not jump to the fact that it's causal. And so what's the evidence, or we call it biological plausibility, that these associations are actually causal? So if you look at autopsies from high pollution areas like Mexico City, they have lots of pathology that is similar to what we see in Parkinson's patients. They don't get the disease, at least the animals don't, but the people do. And so it's much higher. You see neuroinflammation and accumulation of some of these proteins, which I mentioned before. If we take extracts, say from diesel or PM 2.5, it's neurotoxic at pretty low levels, and levels that accumulate in our brains of certain chemicals. So they're relevant levels of exposure. And we can recapitulate many of this pathology in animals. So these are the sorts of data that we collect to try to see if the associations really are causing the altered epidemiology. So how might it work? So I just have to briefly review pathology in Parkinson's so I can talk about how it might work. So Parkinson's effects, we all associate it with loss of dopamine cells, and this is the substantia nigra, or the black substance in the middle of the brain. It's called the midbrain. And if you cut the brain here and you look, this is what it looks like. And this is a whole bunch of melanin, neuromelanin or pigment that in a normal brain looks like this. It's dark, and you can see it's very pale in a Parkinson's patient. And the reason why it's pale is these neurons that collect and have all of this pigment, that's what you see here, they're sick and dying, and they're accumulating this, we call this a Lewy body. And it turns out that this inclusion, which is not normal, is full of a protein called alpha-synuclein, and it's misfolded. And we know that that's toxic to the cells, and that underlies, you can't make the diagnosis of Parkinson's without this on pathology. And we know this alpha-synuclein, for many reasons, is central to the cause of Parkinson's. What happens is that normally alpha-synuclein is unfolded and it's in a monomeric form or just one molecule. But in Parkinson's and a few other diseases, these proteins start aggregating, misfolding, and they form these clumps. We call them oligomers. And these oligomers are what's toxic, we believe, and causes cell death. But they can also form these fibrils, which may also be toxic. And that's what these Lewy bodies are formed. So how does this process work? Why does this happen? And how does it start? So there's this process, the Nobel Prize was won on this, where one molecule that's misfolded can convert other molecules to be misfolded in clump. So it kind of contaminates normal ones and causes them to seed like a crystal. You have a little seed and it builds on it. And that's what happens. And it travels from one neuron to the other. So what we know is if you have alpha-synuclein in the, say, in the gut, it travels up what's called the vagus nerve, which connects to the brainstem and then moves and spreads throughout the brain. This process takes about 20 years. And we have lots of evidence that this happens in many, many people. For example, in a number of countries, they used to cut the vagus nerve for really bad ulcers. And those people have more than a 50% reduction in Parkinson's. So we believe at least a lot of it starts in the gut, travels up to the brain through a nerve called the vagus nerve, or it may start right from the olfactory bulb and then spread kind of backwards and down. So those are the processes that we think happen. And there's so many, we have so many unknowns. It might be that these particles get into the brain, they get through the lungs, travel through the blood and get in the brain. And we've tested many of these chemicals and they're quite toxic. So that may be one way. One scary thing we did is one of the diesel exhaust extracts that we use in some of our models, we analyze it, and it turns out that the ones that kill these dopamine neurons in about a week are at the same concentrations that are in our brains in autopsy specimens. So it's quite scary how much of this stuff bioaccumulates because our brains are so lipophilic. Other mechanisms might be that we know it causes a lot of inflammation, air pollution. So we know that inflammatory molecules and cytokines may contribute to the brain inflammation and contribute to Parkinson's and dementia. We also know that air pollution changes the bacteria in your gut and also makes your gut leakier, and that may promote the alpha-synuclein start to aggregate and then travel up the vagus nerve and get into the brain. So there's multiple potential mechanisms, which we're still just at the beginning of studying how this may happen. So just a few of the studies that we've done here. So we like to use zebrafish. They're cheap. They develop very quickly. You're watching, this is a time lapse. So you can see within 24 hours, this is the beginning of the fish up here. This is the yolk. And in 24 hours, they're pretty close to being formed. And then by the time they're 3 days old, they're swimming around, they have formed dopamine neurons, that's what you see here on the right. One of the things that's so cool about them is they're transparent when they're young, and we can genetically modify them with all these fluorescent proteins. So this is a living fish that we had made him transgenic, and these are all dopamine neurons within the brain of a fish, very similar to what we see in people. And if we take some diesel exhaust and just throw it into the water and we measure the dopamine cells, they kill dopamine cells. The fish don't swim very well. They're all inflamed. These are genetically modified fish, looking at the inflammatory cells called microglia in the brain, and they become very inflamed and very angry. And then we can use as another transgenic animal that we use to look at protein degradation. So what seems to happen is that the diesel exhaust seems to block your ability to clear these aggregated proteins. So you're not making more necessarily, but you can't get rid of them as well. And this is one of the central mechanisms we believe underlying Parkinson's, and we think air pollution works at least partially in this way. And we can save it using drugs that stimulate this protein degradative pathway. So we can do very advanced genetics and what's called transcriptomics and proteomics, looking at every gene that's expressed in the brains, every protein, or at least thousands of proteins, and we can see the different pathways that are involved. So it affects multiple pathways, and so these air pollution toxins are quite bad. So just in summary, we have pretty strong evidence that air pollution increase is associated with increased risk of Parkinson's. And we have some pretty good animal studies. We just showed you the one that we published, and we published 3 or 4 of them in this, and we have a bunch of rodent models that are in the process, but there's pretty strong animal evidence, and it's gaining that it supports what we call biological plausibility. In other words, these associations, it's caused by the air pollution and not something else that associates with higher air pollution. And I think this is among other environmental toxins, maybe one of the most important ones as a risk factor for Parkinson's, because so many people are exposed. So I think lots of people work on this, and the ones in yellow are the ones that worked in the lab, and Beata and Kim are huge forces in this field, in the epidemiology field. And we were supported from the NIH and a variety of foundations. And so I think I can stop there. And
okay, well, Dr. Brownstein, thank you so much. It's a really excellent presentation. Do we have questions? Looking for questions?
I see one from Shannon Moore.
Hi there. Doctor, this is really kind of profoundly sad. We have particulate monitors that we've invested in through a Purple Air network, and they're connected to an EPA air network. What kind of data are you using to look at the particulates, and how is that information geographically dispersed? I know within our region we have on average fairly decent air quality, but we know that individual neighborhoods can have vastly different air quality.
Yeah, so people monitor many different things, and I'm not sure what you're monitoring in your particulate, whether it's PM 2.5 or larger particulate. Yeah, PM 2.5 is a pretty good measure for many of air pollutants. So there's many ways. Most of the exposures people have done, the way we do it is through geocoding by distance. So how far are you away from these monitors, basically? And so the neighborhoods will give us an idea. Other people look at how close you are to, say, a freeway, which is always a good way to measure. It's important to realize also that relatively small changes. So one of the things that really shocked me in Beata's work was she did this in Denmark, and I would have predicted it would be negative just because in Copenhagen, the most polluted area, it's still very, very clean air. And she still saw a difference between that. So you can monitor many things and nobody quite knows how far away you should be. And you use resident, you use occupation. It's very difficult to separate those. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Other questions? Well, I've got a question. Since it's a 20-year lag time, and I know we're looking at geolocation is definitely a factor, but taking that aside, in our region, I think other regions, because of the Clean Air Act, we've really reduced a variety of air pollutants, including PM 2.5. So one would think that going forward, we should see less Parkinson's because of the overall dramatic overall reduction of particulate matter. Oh, we lost you. Dr. Bronstein?
I still see him on, but he's showing on mute.
Mute, and his camera went off.
His camera's off.
Hate to lose him. It was a good presentation. I'm sure there's more questions. Do you have a cell phone to touch base with him?
Yes, let me ping him real quick.
Okay, am I open? I don't know what's going on. Okay, it's really doing weird things here. Anyway, I would hope so that there'd be a decrease in time. The problem is there's other things that cause things. So there's pesticide exposure. One of the things we're really worried about are nanoplastics, and that's just going up exponentially. And there's evidence building that nanoplastics may be a risk factor. So I'm hoping that it goes down because of air pollution. Obviously, in many other countries, there are extreme levels. I have friends that live in Iran and they can't even see, 5 feet in front of them in Tehran right now. So, but yes, I hope so. LA has the same thing. We had terrible air pollution when I moved here, and it's dramatically better.
Our region is similar. I think you kind of answered this question, but just to probe on it, there are freeways everywhere. The U.S. freeway system is pretty extensive, and most people live within a couple miles of a freeway. So is there a sense that, obviously, the closer you are, the more likely this will have an effect, but is there any sense of what distance might keep you less impacted?
Yeah, I don't know how you figure that out really, because, it also depends, like a lot of these, at least in LA, a lot of the big apartment complexes have good filters and they can filter out a lot of the particulate matter. Even some of the cars now have filters on them. So it's really hard. There's so many variables. Hopefully, just as the reason why the air pollution is going down as we switch away from combustibles, but the distance, I mean, obviously, the further away the better, But if you work near a freeway, it's different than where you live. So I think it's common sense, but I don't think there's any one cutoff. And it's so hard to study because you have multiple risk factors. So now we're peeling out a risk factor, one of many, And then trying to subdivide that makes it really, it's almost impossible, given the numbers that we're dealing with.
Last question from me. Your focus is on the causes of PD, but I guess looking at all the research that you've got there, is any of this research also shedding light on possible cures?
Yeah, so one of the exciting things in all neurologic diseases right now is as we're learning the causes, then we can target the cause. So we can target it. So in Alzheimer's, we finally have a couple of drugs that are approved that actually slow Alzheimer's. They're not perfect, but they make a difference for the first time. And the way that works is by understanding what the cause was, and it's a misfolding of a different protein called A beta. And they've targeted A beta and they've been able to now slow the progression. So now we're doing the same thing in Parkinson's. So, for example, when I showed in the slide that we have drugs that stimulate the degradation of alpha-synuclein. So, if that is the cause, then that drug should help slow down the progression and the treatment. In fact, we just have a big proposal. We're working with a large group where we're isolating stem cells from individuals where we can identify their risk factors and then treat their stem cells specifically for what's causing it in them. So maybe it's a pesticide that works through one way, or maybe it's air pollution through another way. And so by understanding what's causing it, we hopefully can treat it.
Okay, thank you. More questions? Anyone? Last chance. Okay, I'm not seeing any, so
I have a question. This is Sunil Kumar from COG. Dr. Bronstein, I had a question. You talked about Parkinson's, but dementia also kind of seems to be related to Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. I mean, they are neurological disease. Do you also find any correlation between any kind of air pollutant and dementia?
Yeah, so like I said, dementia, there's many causes of dementia. So Alzheimer's is one cause, Parkinson's is another, strokes are another. There's a variety of different causes of dementia. Now, depends on how you study it. So a lot of epidemiologists will use like Medicare databases, for example. And what they do is the bigger the numbers, the more statistical power they have. And so if they list in the diagnosis dementia, then they just pull that in. So there's been these large studies looking at dementia, which is very nonspecific. Some of them are positive and some aren't. But when there's some recent studies looking at Alzheimer's specifically as the cause of dementia, we're getting better at differentiating the causes, and there does seem to be an association. So I think that many of these pathological pathways, this misfolding of proteins, these formations of fibrils, all of those processes have a lot in common. In fact, there's a disorder called Lewy body disease, which is kind of an overlap between Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, is what Robin Williams actually had. And so there's almost certainly going to be an association, though that hasn't been studied that well since the numbers are even smaller. So the answer is yes, very likely, though the evidence isn't as strong for dementia as a group.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
You can always email me questions as well as they come up. So,
okay. I guess we'll conclude Dr. Bronstein's participation, but thank you so much. This was really interesting.
No, it's my pleasure, and anytime I can help. Thank you.
Okay, so with that, I think we're at the point of adjournment. Is there anything else that we need to do, Jen or Jeff?
No, there's nothing else.
Okay, so we will be adjourned at 1:53. Next MWAC meeting will be held virtually on February 25th. So thanks to everybody for participating. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Vasquez Luna.
And I'll second it. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Thank you all.
That was a great